Tolley.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of Evantrepreneur and register for the Dallas, Texas event, August 1st and 2nd. So you're going to have a great time. It's going to change your life, and you're just going to be like, oh, man, I'm so glad I came to Texas. So make sure you register for that. Broadcasting remote still this week. Today's the last day of that, but it's been fun. Training some business owners, speaking of business training some business owners, just talking about a lot of different topics that impact success and how most educational systems, whether they're schooling or after the fact business training, don't really cover the necessary issues. So just been having a great time, and thank you to all the hosts that have been hosting me while I've been hosting the show out of your locations. So I appreciate that. All right, so the killer confesses. The killer who shot these people in the church, he has confessed to the crime. There's a whole bunch of weird, sketchy things revolving around this guy. I'm sure that the conspiracy theorist group are going to have a field day with this if they haven't already. I don't know. Our next guests, and yes, there are two of them, our next guests were brought to my attention because of a show that we did that I thought was just kind of fun. You know, I didn't expect it to turn into anything massive. I didn't think there's really that much of a demand for it, especially on a show like the one we do here. But it was. And the guest's name, there's two of them, Gordon Gianninoto. Hope I'm saying that correctly. And Janet Stanley. Now you might be thinking, well, Josh, what's the topic? Okay, you piqued my curiosity. Well, it's actually more than just one topic, and that's why this is so fascinating. Everything from UFO abduction to, yes, I just said UFO abduction. Everything from UFO abduction to odd anomalies happening around the Earth. And when these two people were brought to my attention, I figured, you know what, we should definitely have them on. So, Gordon and Janet, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Oh, we're doing really well, and thanks for having us on, Josh. This is probably going to be one of the most exciting shows you've ever done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great having you. I love the vote of confidence. You guys are a pleasure already. All right, so let's kind of get into this because one of the things that everybody keeps saying is that, you know, are they really taking people? And both of you have said that you have been abducted, correct?
No. You see, I gotta explain this to you. Unselfish extraterrestrials have a unified mind, but humans have a mind that's like a bomb that went off. On the subconscious, they're thinking, love hurts, so how are you going to hurt me? On the conscious mind, they're thinking, you know, this must be illegal for you to come into my house and take me up on a ship. I'm going to report you as soon as I can, and if I had a gun in my hand right now, I'd probably try and shoot you even though you'd stop me. And then your superconscious mind goes, we're all brothers and sisters, how can I help you? So it's very difficult dealing with people. And most people, we ran a UFO group in Bangor, Maine. And by the way, we live on a windswept mountaintop on the Maine coast. And we are ready for pole shift, and I will be talking about that. But we ran a UFO group for 18 years in Bangor, and we had up to 30 people. And even the people who said they had bad experiences, wouldn't you know it, they seem to become kinder, more intuitive, more interested in the earth and the future of the people. They seem to become more empathetic. And the net result of all these people who said they had bad experiences was that they were better people. And if you read Dr. John Mack's book, he thought, what are these people? Is this true? I'm going to hire a hypnotic regression expert, and we're going to regress them and see what really happened. And we were fortunate enough to spend 3 days with Dr. John Mack in Rangeley, Maine in 2003. And he said, what I learned was that the most intelligent, best adjusted people on the world are the ones who said they've had contact with ETs. So.
And we don't call it abduction, it's called experiences. So it's not really a scary thing.
No, and they've made contact with us, and we've voluntarily participated in this. So there's nothing untoward happened in any way, shape, or form. So there's nothing negative about it at all. You see, they cannot contact you consciously unless you put a call in, giving permission. And the same is true when you want to contact your spirit guides and your spiritual masters and other people on other dimensions who might be of assistance to you. They can't do anything with you unless you ask them. So that's the first step, is to put the call. But unfortunately, like attracts like. So if you're selfish and you put a call in, unselfish ETs are not going to be the ones answering the call. And if you're unselfish and you put in the call, the selfish ones can't. They're not allowed to contact you. So if you're unselfish, and I'll define that later, if you're unselfish and you put in the call, you will be contacted by unselfish ETs. And there are 7 billion of them on Earth, more than one for each person. They're all on the 4th dimension waiting for the Earth to graduate to that dimension. And the selfish ETs who are here have been told, and they're working with the government, so of course that makes sense. They've been told you have 2 choices: either turn to light and love because the Earth is about to graduate to a new level, or move away. And of course, being selfish, they can't see it that way. What they see is that they want to stay here and mess with people. Now, the beauty of this is that this is the 3rd dimension, and in the 3rd dimension, I know people say length, width, height, and time is 4, but I'm going to call it the 3rd dimension. The 3rd dimension, selfish and unselfish are allowed to mix unlimited. So every time a good person comes up with a great idea that's going to help everybody, a selfish person comes along and messes with it, creates loopholes, exclusions, everything they can to ruin it. So the thing is like even this mass shooting in South Carolina, every family, especially ones who are in the light, have children born who are very selfish, and very selfish families have children born who are in the light. And the reason why is so that on the 3rd dimension, this is a learning experience where each one gets to learn the nature of the other so that they can identify. But in the next dimension, which we're about to graduate to about 100 years after pole shift, is the complete separation. So the 4th dimension, you have selfish planets and you have unselfish planets and nothing in between. The 5th dimension, which is after that, which we're a long way from at this point, the 5th dimension, all is one. So you reach a point where you're wondering, geez, haven't I done this before? And yes, you have. You've lived 1,000 lifetimes on the average before you even ask the question, like a bad Jack Nicholson movie, is this all there is? And finally, a secret door that you never noticed opens up in front of you, and you notice there's a fork in the road. And like Yogi Berra says, which I think is a riot, he says, if you see a fork in the road, take it. But anyway, the thing is that your choice becomes to organize all your intentions and your behavior around selfishness or unselfishness. So, but I really want to paint the big picture. You know, a lot of guests that you've had have a little slice, and part of it might be right and most of it's wrong. And I don't want to really name anybody or insult anybody, but I'm going to give you the really big picture. So as I mentioned all these little pieces, you'll be able to put it into perspective. Now, let's go back to the very beginning, before the universe. Now, Josh, you're the creator, and you know everything, and you can do anything. What are you thinking about?
Well, I'm thinking about the purpose of why I'm creating whatever I'm creating. If I have the ability to do it, then it's not the how that I'm focused on, it's the why.
Okay, so what the creator did was, the creator was sitting there and thinking, you know, if I'm already the maximum of everything, I know everything, can do anything, haven't done anything yet, how can I take myself, my own self, the creator, to the next level? How can I become more than I am now? And so the creator got this great idea. Why not create a universe and divide itself into trillions and trillions and quadrillions of trillions of pieces and set each one free to live in the universe, forgetting totally that it was part of the creator, and experience every possible aspect of life from A to Z, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so that's what the Creator did, and broke up all these pieces. And so therefore, every single thing in the universe is actually part of the Creator.
Well, 1 second, guys. Talking about breaking things up into pieces, I'm up against a commercial break.
Okay.
So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back right after this.
Okay, thanks.
And my term abductee is obviously wrong, but they have had experiences, and we're kind of unpacking this entire process, all this information. There's so many directions to take this. But Gordon, I kind of wanted to let you keep going on the trajectory you're going with, the history behind everything we're seeing.
Thank
so if you can pick up where you left off. Sir.
Thank you. So when you're first coming from the Creator, you know nothing. You don't even know you were part of the Creator. And your first experience is probably as a mineral where you're just learning that you exist. Then the next level, you become a plant and you begin to feel and respond to the environment around you. And then finally you become an animal and you're learning to think. And then as a man, you have a spiritual nature. So what happens is that people live thousands of lifetimes. If you could look at all your lifetimes, you would look like grains of sand on an endless beach sparkling in the sun. So each time that you live, you are born on a planet, you live, and then you die. And then on your next lifetime, you might be on the same planet if you have karma or something that entangled you, the situations that you have to balance. But if you haven't, then you might go to other planets. Now, I'll tell you, about a third of the Earth right now are star children. They came from other planets to be here at this time. But what's going on is Earth is a school. So there are millions and billions of civilizations in space on all dimensions, and dimensions go all the way up. You know, you talk about the fifth dimension, sixth, seventh, 22nd, 32nd. There's all these dimensions and the levels. It's sort of like where Jesus said, my Father's house has many mansions. That's what he's talking about, dimensions. So the Earth is a school, and what happened is that it was selected as a little faraway place where this experiment could take place, where things that went wrong on other civilizations that were never resolved, people from both sides of those issues volunteered to be born on Earth and hash it out here. So even though it's hard to see, what you've got is every single problem in the universe, slavery, misogyny, you name it, discrimination of any kind, failure to thrive, living in hot climates, cold climates, every possible combination you could think of life as you know it on Earth is brought here to Earth intentionally so that all this could be resolved. And believe it or not, about a third of the Earth is ready to graduate, and there is going to be a graduation. So that's what, on the one hand, you have the apocalypse and pole shift, which is entirely natural. There's nothing you can do to stop it. But on the other hand, you have immediately after that, you have a graduation, which is the meaning in the Bible. And I am not religious at all, neither is Janet. We are what you'd call spiritual. We believe in the Creator. Now, so what happened here is that all these problems have been resolved, and people who have made a conscious choice to be unselfish, and by that I don't mean that they're saints. I mean that 51% of the time you ask yourself before you do something, would I like it if somebody else did this to me? And that's what the golden rule is. And if you get nothing more out of all the spiritual texts that have ever been written than that, you've done the right thing. Now, most people are a mixture of about 60% selfish and about 40% unselfish. Some people, and I call them auditioning for their next lifetime, some people have decided to become 90% or more selfish. And that would be these people who do the mass shootings and are just absolutely violent and never think of anybody except themselves. You know, you could put a label on there, narcissistic sociopath or narcissistic psychopath. But the thing is everything in life, and really if you go around every day looking at things, is this selfish or unselfish? Now the selfish is called service to self, and the unselfish is called service to others. So you have STO, service to self, and service to self, STS, and service to others, STO. So that's a common phrase that you'll hear when discussing these topics. But the future is that I'm going to get to how the upgrade of the human race, the new race. But the future is that after this graduation, the only people on Earth will be unselfish, and they'll have open contact with unselfish extraterrestrials from all over the universe. And together they are going to build within 1,000 years a fleet of spaceships and go out to the rest of the universe, to all these other civilizations and planets, and we're going to land, and we're going to ask them what their problem is, and they're going to tell us, and we're just going to click our fingers because we lived on Earth. We went through every difficult situation a person could possibly endure anywhere in the universe, and we're going to solve their problems and put all the universe in touch with each other on an unselfish basis, and we're going to be known as the explorer race. So that's in 1,000 years, but that isn't now. So what's happening now is that this faraway little place, Earth, was created as a school. And because there's a graduation going on, nobody, no elite, powerful, rich, the billionaires, the businessmen, nobody is going to be allowed to cut class and leave Earth. That was their plan. Now, the government found out about this whole scenario of pole shift and Planet X at the time of the Roswell crash. The first saucers were brought down by radar in New Mexico beginning in 1945, and Roswell was just one of many. And what happened is the government found out that this pole shift was going to happen, that Nibiru, or it's known as the Winged Globe, the planet of crossing, the Great Destroyer comet, which it's not a comet, I'll tell you what it is, but that it was going to come through and move the crust of the Earth, slide it over the mantle. In other words, the core keeps turning. The North Pole of every planet and the sun in the solar system always points north and up. And it's going to slide the crust of the Earth, which granite floats on magma. As heavy as granite is, 200 pounds per cubic foot, it floats on liquid iron. So it's going to be grabbed by its iron bar, which is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and it's going to be slid over the North Pole and then released. And the new North Pole is going to be Recife, Brazil. So that could happen even within a year. But we've been waiting for a long time. So getting back to putting this all in perspective, as a child, I took a long time to learn to read, but my father had been kicked out of the Catholic Church, and he said, how can the church kick you? How can God kick you out of church? So he bought all these books on telepathy, Roswell. I was born in 1948, and I didn't learn to read till I was 6 or 7. And he was a member of the Edgar Cayce Foundation in Virginia Beach, Virginia. So we had Edgar Cayce material all around. So among the first things I ever read was Edgar Cayce's prediction there would be pole shift between 68 and 98, and all these other things about reincarnation and putting all the pieces together. So I was very lucky that I had my father, who was quite interested, and nobody else wanted to discuss it with him except me. So we had a great relationship. And the first things I bought when I started working was a telescope, and I started studying the stars, and I was really good in science and math, and I was selected as a future astronaut when I was 15 in 1963, and I was given a grant by the National Science Foundation to study astrophysics and astronomy and space science at the Hayden Planetarium in New York. Now, I was growing up in Connecticut, and I was able to take a train into New York City every day and go to the Hayden Planetarium. And then I was recruited by Princeton and the University of Virginia Schools of Aerospace Engineering, and I decided to go to UVA, which was a mistake. But I started having UFO incidents as an early child. I remember when I was 5, I lay down for a nap, and some adults came and took me somewhere for 3 days. And the interesting thing was when they took me, I was an adult. I was not the 5-year-old child. And we were discussing something about a planet, and I had no idea what it was. It was thousands of people. I couldn't remember exactly, but I woke up and I ran in to tell my mother, and she goes, "Oh no, that was a dream. You know, you've only been asleep for an hour." And it was a hot summer afternoon. And I said, "No, it wasn't a dream.
All right,
guys,
it was
real."
Wait a second. Hold on. Wait. We're up against another break. You're making my job easy today.
You're killing me.
We're up against another break. We'll be back right after this.
Okay.
What do you get into that particular thing? I don't think people understand that.
They will.
All right, I feel like there's so much to cover. This could take 15 hours, but we only have 2 available to us. So
I know, darling, and I love you, and I'm doing the best I
more.
can. I'm doing the best I can.
Well, I kind of want to get some specifics about your guys' experience.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's what I'm leading up
There's so much
to.
to cover in the background. So I kind of want to get
we
what
will.
happened to you guys specifically.
We will. So when I had that experience at age 5 and I told my mother, I realized, wow, there's stuff that happened to me. I know what happened to me. You can't tell me it didn't happen to me. And I realized for the first time at age 5 that people weren't necessarily going to believe what I had to say. But I knew what I saw. I knew what I did. So, and then as a child, we grew up in the woods. My parents were divorced. I lived with my mother and my brother. We'd wake up simultaneously in the middle of the night, 7 miles from the nearest street light, and it was like we're in the center of Yankee Stadium. There was so much bright light outside the house, and we'd all be wide awake, and we'd run out the door, and there'd be nothing there. And that happened night after night. I can't even tell you how many times. So I'm the kind of person who, when somebody tells me something about a saucer or whatever, I have a way with my heart of just knowing whether something's true or not. I don't necessarily listen to my mind and think of the logic of it. I just feel, is this true or isn't it? And I can know that often right when I first hear it. So instead of thinking, is there more evidence of aliens and UFOs, I thought, I want to contact the extraterrestrials myself. So beginning in 1968, I thought, well, I'm going to teach myself telepathy. Well, you can't go to school for that. So I used to take walks out at night, and I would look up in the sky and say, well, I know there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. The same up there is down here, believe me. I know there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I would like to contact the good. And here I am trying to contact you telepathically. So 20 years later, in 1988, in 1964, before I went to college, my mother took my brother and I to Puerto Rico, and we took a ferry back from the Bacardi rum factory, which is on an island, as I recall, and we're looking at the night sky, and a little pea appeared, this gray pea in a sort of a moist kind of misty sky, but it wasn't cloudy, and you could just barely see some stars, and it just grew and grew and grew until it was an odd-shaped W, as if a skywriting plane had painted a W over the ferry. And all of a sudden, the sun started to rise out of the middle loop, and like, what the hell is this? And we're watching, and this huge mothership, it was a mile in diameter, it was circular on the bottom, flat on the bottom, glowing bright orange, like a white milk glass with an orange light bulb in it, no detail, just huge, slowly moved out of the center loop and paused, and all of a sudden a door which you couldn't see until it opened. It was like a hangar door, like a garage door. It just went up into the wall of the mothership, and a flying saucer flew right out that opening, out over the Atlantic, and disappeared. And then a few minutes later, a second flying saucer flew out through the opening out over the Atlantic and disappeared. And then a third. And then the door closed, and by then the wind had taken this W and moved it, dispersed it, and it just slowly winked out. So it didn't go anywhere. It was like it was a dimensional thing. Now I know from the color of it that it was a Zeta ship of the unselfish humans from Zeta Reticuli, which I'll get into in a minute. But anyway, as a result of that, I'm sitting in engineering school going, if I get really good at this, the government's going to have me build missiles to kill people. And I've already seen that there's this technology way beyond anything they're telling us about. They're covering this up. I know it. And I thought, well, I don't want to be one of those people that builds weapons, because Edgar Cayce said the scientists are karmically responsible for the weapons they build. And I thought, I don't want to have anything to do with it. So I dropped out. I became a photographer for 4 years. Then I went back to college in New Haven and got a degree in psychology. Then I didn't know what I was going to do when people said, well, you love to read, you love to write, and you love to talk. Why don't you become a lawyer? And I thought, oh, why not? So I went to law school in New Hampshire at what's now the University of New Hampshire Law School. And I was sitting in Connecticut as a trial lawyer, inside with violent, dangerous, argumentative people who weren't happy to see me. And all of a sudden it came over me in 1985. this is the time for me to move to Maine to work outside with my hands and have clients who are happy to see me and get ready for pole shift. So that's what I did in 1985. So in 1988, I had the girlfriend from hell, and she was driving, and I got a clear telepathic message. We're on a saucer, and we're coming to take you on board. And I looked up, and there was a huge meteor streaking in about 18,000 miles an hour, and it slowed down until it was 100 feet above our car. We were doing about 50 or 60 miles an hour, and I told her to pull over and stop, and she wouldn't. And a car came and it zoomed off again, and we continued our trip. We were going to Bangor, Maine, and then it was hovering in a golf course, and it took off again. It was over our car, and I turned the steering wheel and put my foot on the brake, and I said, "Stop, we're going to go on board." And she goes, "Help, help," and she ran to a house, and she was banging on the door, "Help, there's UFOs." And I said, "Look, it's gone, come back in." So we went a couple more miles, and it was blocking the road. It was hovering about 3 feet off the road. It was a 100-foot disc, black. And at the top center was a flashing red, white, and blue light. And at the bottom center, there was the same flashing red. And I said, "Oh, our national colors, isn't that nice?" Under each side was like a huge sausage, like pontoons, like this could land on the ocean, maybe 100 feet long and 30 feet in diameter. And each pontoon had a big railroad engineer type headlight on the front of the locomotive at the end of each pontoon. And we're in the country in Maine, about 20 miles south of Bangor. And so I jumped out of the car and I ran over and I said, "Beam me up." She ran over to a house and started banging on the door. "Help, help, there's UFOs." And the bottom of the saucer opened up, and a faint green light came down and picked her off the porch of this house and picked me up and brought us up, and the bottom of the saucer closed, and I looked at her, and she was standing there sound asleep. And another door opened, and a man from the Pleiades welcomed me into the other room where we had a 4-hour discussion about the future of Earth. And so that was, and they said, well, you know, things that have happened or are happening, they're recorded. But the things that haven't happened yet are in the hands of man. And if you go around saying what you've learned, they'll want to lock you up. They'll want to ridicule you because you'll be wrong, because there's so many intervening events. And this was in December 7th, 1988. And that we're, for your protection, we're just going to have you remember that you were right about most of the things you said. So then I was talking to a psychic who took over from the Edgar Cayce Foundation, the ARE in Virginia Beach, Ann Puryear, and she reads the Akashic Record, and she said, "You know, you've never had a partner on your wavelength. Why don't you ask the Space Brothers to help you find one?" And I thought, yeah, why don't I? And I thought, I know what I like. I'm 6'2". I'm half Sicilian, half Scottish. I'd like a half Scottish, half Scandinavian girlfriend, 6 feet tall, blue eyes, reddish blonde hair, sees UFOs, psychic, artistic, intelligent, loves animals, particularly cats, and believes less is more. And a year later, I went out to lecture to 2 different UFO groups, and I met Janet. And we went on one date, which she suggested that we climb Acadia Mountain in the national park, and for 3 hours. And the next day, that night I thought, I'm not driving an hour and a half each way to date this girl. And it turned out she had been living with a billionaire for 10 years, traveling the world. And she came home one day, and he had 2 22-year-old nurses sitting on his lap. And he told her, "Get your stuff, you're done. It's over." And so she was single. And I went back over and I found her. I had no idea where she was. And I said, "Get your stuff. You're moving in with me." And 25 years later, we're still together.
Right.
Years.
To me, when we climbed the mountain, it was like love at first sight. But I really feel the ETs got us together.
Absolutely.
Because I was having UFO experiences at a very young age. And I always was fascinated about having a UFO of my own to take to space, and I would tell everybody that because that was my ultimate
biggest
plan.
interest.
Yeah,
right. And they called her Janet the Planet.
Yeah, because my name's Janet. But I'm part Native American too, Native American, a small part from on my father's side. And I can talk to the animals, and I can I had a black cat when I was 4, and it was sitting by the window, and all of a sudden it turned into a gray alien and back into a cat. So I think that
okay, wait, hold on 1 second, guys. I'm up against a break. Oh. You know, I have interviewed foreign dignitaries, presidential candidates, but I got to tell you, this is one of the most interesting interviews I have ever done in my life.
Thank you. Well, I told your producer.
We're going to keep it going right after this.
You
I told
will.
you it'd be a fun Friday interview.
You will.
And I want to know what a Zeta hybrid is, because
I will,
Janet is the mother of one.
We're
getting to
that
right after this.
Yes.